Thank everybody for coming. What a wonderful crowd, and so great to have all these great candidates here, and David Glass, Mayor, and Bruce Robinson, KRCB. First, what I want to do before we start is thank some of our sponsors. I'm Therese Horsting, President of the Democratic Club of Southern Sonoma County. And our co-sponsors are also the Sonoma County Democratic Party, the 10th AD Democrats, and the Sonoma County Latino Democratic Club. I also want to thank, of course, Joey Brisson. Do I say that right? Brisson. Brisson, with the Boys and Girls Club of Marin and Southern Sonoma County here in Petaluma. I'd like to thank our candidates and speakers, Honorable David Glass, Mayor, Moderator Bruce Robinson, KRCB News Director, and Timekeeper, my one and only, Wes Malaspino. And for media coverage, we have the Press Democrat, the Argus Courier, Petaluma Community Access, and I think Santa Rosa Media is here as well. Photography by Joan Bunn, and I see lots of other people taking great pictures and videotaping. And I'd like to thank Tim Nahn for helping us get all these wonderful extra chairs from Elam and United Church of Christ. And I want to thank all the Democratic Club volunteers for sign-in, setup, food, refreshments, all your help gathering the chairs. If the volunteers can raise their hands, please. Please raise your hands. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I want to welcome Mayor David Glass. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I want to welcome all of you folks that have come from outside of the city of Petaluma into our Boys and Girls Club here this evening. Welcome to town. It's so great to know that we're going to have a forum with Democrats. That means we're going to hear something that has substance and makes sense. I don't know about you, but I've from time to time been watching the nonsense with what they called Republican debates. One thing that I think is beyond being able to debate is the nonsense that they've perpetuated on America. And tonight you're going to be able to hear people that are vying to become a member of the House of Representatives and work under Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I know that that's going to happen. I believe it will. And so when June comes and you keep your eye on the ball to November, I know you folks are all going to stay engaged and spread the news and call everybody you know in Nevada and help Barack Obama or any other battleground state. So thank you for being here. I want to introduce members of the Petaluma City Council that are here tonight. Chris Albertson from our Petaluma City Council. Teresa Barrett from our Petaluma City Council. Mike Healy from the Petaluma City Council. And we thank all of you for being here. And I want to now introduce your moderator. He's one of the best interviewers I've ever had the experience of being interviewed by, from KRCB Radio, Bruce Robinson. Bruce, welcome to Petaluma.
Thank you very much. Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for coming out tonight. I want to say thanks to our sponsoring organizations, the Sonoma County Democratic Club of the South County, the Sonoma County Latino Democratic Club, and of course the Boys and Girls Club here, and I understand there's also a group called the 10th Assembly District Democrats who are helping put this on, so thanks to all of them. And thanks to our field of candidates for coming out tonight. You're probably used to seeing them in alphabetical order. That's not what we're doing here. We have arrayed them by random choice in numbers drawn, and we will proceed across the table from left to right. And as each question circles through, we'll begin with the next person on so that everybody gets an equal opportunity. The general format for tonight is that we will begin with opening statements from each candidate. Those will be 2 minutes long. We will then go to a series of questions that are being circulated from the cards that are among you. I have a good-sized stack here already, so we will find like-minded questions and pose those to the candidates, ask each candidate to respond to each question. And then at the conclusion of all this, we'll have a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate. So the questions are I've collected a bunch already, or I've had them collected for me. If you have a question that occurs to you underway and you have a card within reach, just hold it up. It will be collected and brought to me, so you have not missed the opportunity. We invite the candidates to speak directly to the audience. The format here is such that we're trying to discourage direct interactions among them. It's okay, of course, to highlight your differences. That's what we're all about. It would also be kind of refreshing to have you answer the questions that are actually asked. With regard to the timing I just mentioned, my esteemed colleague here is equipped with the bright colored cards to cue you when time is winding down and, more importantly, when it has run out. We'll ask you to respect those as best as you can. As I'm sure you have all seen, there's a collection of literature for the various candidates at the back table. If you haven't gathered a bunch already, you can certainly do so on your way out this evening. So with that, I think we can move into the opening statements, and by the luck of the draw, Andy Caffrey gets to be the first speaker. So as we expect to hear from all of you, why are you here and why do you want this job?
Well, I wish I didn't have to be here. Not here. I like Petaluma. But I'm running because we're in a time of crisis. I've been working on the climate issue for 30 years. We also are in an economic crisis, and we're in a political crisis. The Republicans are destroying our democracy. They're literally dismantling it. Ever since Reagan came to power, the concentration of wealth has moved completely over to the top 1%. In 1979, the top 1% had about 8% of the national wealth. As of 2007, it was 23%. I think I've heard it's 25% now. And as it goes up, if you look at the curve, you know, from poor to rich, it goes up like this. You lift it here with more tax cuts for the rich, and it goes down here. So what's happened is, literally, the buying power of the middle class and the poor have been sucked away to the rich. That's why the economy has stopped, which is why tax cuts aren't going to solve the problem, which is why we have to get money back into the hands of the middle class and the poor. Did you hear the news? We're no longer a middle-class nation. We are a poor person's nation. The census shows that more than 1 in 2 people live in households that make double the poverty level or less. We are a poor country now. That's what these people have done. If you look at the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, and then you look at the 4 Republican senators, you find that they all meet it. This is not about going up and making deals with Republicans. This is about fighting. And my history is as a fighter and as an organizer and a negotiator. I've worked in Earth First since 1985. I helped found 2 Green parties. The BBC recognizes me as a world historic figure for being the first opponent in the grassroots against genetic engineering, and I've been a climate crisis organizer since 1980. I've done everything I could every other way, and now we just have the federal government as the only option we have for changing our fate with the climate crisis. And that's why we have to get into Congress.
I'm going to stand up so those of you in the back can see my face and remember me when you're checking the box off on June 5th. I'm Susan Adams. I'm currently serving on the Marin County Board of Supervisors. This is my 3rd term. I have been a nurse for 33 years. I'm a professor of nursing and a women's health nurse practitioner, and I've changed a lot of bedpans in my day. I also am the candidate that swims the best in the healthcare arena. If you want health policy, I'm your candidate. I've been working on the national front with the National Association of Counties to help to bring healthcare reform on board. The policies that I helped to write at the National Association got the attention of the Obama administration, but we have a long way to go to Medicare for all, and that's one of the issues that I'm going to fight for. I have, as a local government elected official, have been at the receiving end of state and federal legislation that has obstructed our ability at the local government level to deliver the goods for our community, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in creating jobs. And contrary to some of the perspectives that you might hear tonight, local government can play a role, as well as other forms of government, in helping to get out of the way and to create opportunities to build jobs. I think with a couple of the candidates, we have a public record. We have a voting record. I have that. You can see what I've done for the last 9 years of my civic engagement in this community. And I'm a fourth-generational Mendocino ranching family, a family in Humboldt. I'm the candidate that has the deepest roots in this community. I care deeply about this community. I've raised my family in the 2nd Congressional District, and my life has been dedicated to community and public service. If you want somebody that's going to do their homework, put a PhD nurse on board. If you want somebody that's going to work hard for you, put a hardworking woman who is a single mom working full-time and putting herself through a PhD program. I have what it takes to do the job for this community. I care deeply about this community. I was just here about 2 weeks ago, I think, for the Crab Fest for the Boys and Girls Club. And I look forward to you checking out more about me and what I've been able to accomplish. Go to my website, susanadamsforcongress.com. And I look forward to serving with you, and I'm asking you for your vote.
I'm sorry?
You can move this along without me intervening.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for being here. It's such a wonderful crowd, and it's thrilling to have the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. My name's Stacey Lawson, and I'm running to be your next Congresswoman here in the beautiful District 2. And you know, many of us have been feeling that our working and middle class families have been getting a short shrift. And I'm running for Congress, quite frankly, to serve and to do whatever I can possibly do to help restore our middle class, to help fight for our working middle class families, to create the opportunities that have been part of what has made the American dream so real for our nation for so long, and we all feel is in some way slipping away. And those opportunities are ones that I had the opportunity to live growing up in a rural blue-collar community. I actually grew up in a trailer in the woods with a father who started a small business. And through his entrepreneurial spirit and hard work, and through the social contract that has made this country strong, we were able to move from a trailer into a little house and ultimately into the middle class. And I think that's something that all of us want the opportunity to live. But we see more recently that in this economic climate, we don't have the high-wage, middle-class jobs that can actually put our kids through college and ensure a secure retirement and make sure that we all have the opportunity to live that American dream. And so that's why we have been putting together a whole series of proposals around restoring strength in our economy, restoring the American manufacturing base, creating high-wage middle-class jobs that can take care of our families, put our kids through school, and make sure we all have a fair shake. So I really look forward to talking about those issues tonight, and hope you'll also go to our website and download the plan and tell us what you think. It's the start of a dialogue, and I'd like to be in dialogue with all of you. We're also an Emily's List endorsed candidate. Women's Campaign Fund, elected officials up and down the district are saying that my background with progressive values, married with a track record of 20 years of economic development and job creation and educating our kids through the work we do at UC Berkeley is the right combination, and I'm happy to be here and talk with you tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks the host for putting this together. I'm Dr. William Courtney, and I'm here to celebrate our environmental legacy. The North Coast is known pretty much around the world for its awareness and activity. And with correct leadership, I think this district can lead this state and this nation to take up a position on global warming that we need to address. As previously mentioned, the environment really deserves attention, and it's possible that we can combine the creation of jobs, which are desperately needed. Some counties in this district are up to 17% stated unemployment. That runs to 25% if you include those who have quit looking for jobs. We can find those jobs in the primary asset of this district, which is the 600 miles of oceanfront. There are projects being done in Europe and Australia right now, a $14 million project, which is bringing tidal energy, which is a zero CO2 energy format that would supply us with a lot of jobs, both in the construction, maintenance, and distribution, and give us a technology that we could turn out to third world countries that are trying to choose between coal or nuclear and provide them with a viable alternative. The environment doesn't really make a lot of votes, but those with children and grandchildren have to be concerned about that. The other thing that a very strong environmentally tolerant industry would do is generate the money needed to preserve pensions and to offset Medicare. As we know, Medicare for the first time this year is going to start to consume its trust because it's not generating enough money to care for itself. A lot of the entitlements are going to be coming under considered threat this year as they try to balance this $600 billion in domestic cuts, and we're going to need to be vigilant so that the Republicans don't kind of take all the money and put it into defense, and they're already putting out a number of bills in that area. Eager to talk about the rest of that later.
Hi, my name is Norman Solomon, and it's great to be with so many friends, many of whom are supporting me in this race in the room here. I think it's crucial to combine feet on the ground and eyes on the stars of our values and our dreams, and one or the other doesn't do it. If we're just transactional, we get what we're getting, making the deals with corporations and Wall Street. If we're just visionary and we don't have the practicality, that's not doing it either. I've been working for several decades now as an activist, organizer, policy researcher, and author. And I think it's clear that at this juncture in history, we've got to defend and fight for what we treasure. And although I have a lot of criticisms and certainly huge concerns about where we are, it's important to affirm and defend and recognize what we have in our own communities. Let me give you an example. I've worked for several years as co-chair with Congressman John Conyers and Donna Smith from the California Nurses Association of the Healthcare Not Warfare campaign. The war drums are beating today about Iran. It's not just a matter of slowing the beating of those war drums. We must stop them. I went to Baghdad before the war 3 times to try to intervene to help stop that invasion. The healthcare part as well. What a wonderful institution we have here, the Petaluma Health Center. It's a federally qualified health center that Bernie Sanders, a progressive member of the U.S. Congress, the Senate now, went to the mat and supports the president as I do when he's right and is willing to push him when he's wrong. And Bernie Sanders went to the mat to say these federally qualified health centers have got to get much more funding. That's why the health center funding budget here in the Petaluma Health Center is as good as it is. We've got to defend Schallenberger Park. We have to be willing to speak out against corporate power manifested in our own communities, the privatization plans for our mail sorting facilities out of Petaluma, the attempt to move it to Oakland, and finally defend educational institutions K through 12, SRJC, including Petaluma campus. Let me close by saying my wife, Cheryl Higgins, has been for several years a family nurse practitioner at Petaluma Health Center. Like hundreds of practitioners, we've got to support their vital work, and Cheryl's here today. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Jared Huffman, and I'm in my 6th year of representing Southern Sonoma County in the state legislature. I love the work I do, and I'm excited to be here tonight running for Congress. I want to thank all the good Democrats here for being part of this forum, because I think this is a critically important election. For the first time in 20 years, we're going to be sending a new representative to Congress, and we have to get it right. And I submit to you that to get it right, we need to look for 3 essential qualities in our next member of Congress. The first is they have to have the right values to match this district. And my values are strong democratic values. Whichever of the issues you choose to look at, the issues that bind us together as Democrats, whether it's the environment or choice or equality or protecting consumers, you're going to find that I have one of the strongest records in the legislature. And my work on most of these issues goes back many years predating my election to the legislature. But values alone are not enough. We also need someone that can get results. And so I'm proud to say that on that second essential quality, I've faced some partisan gridlock and dysfunction in Sacramento. There's plenty of it. But I've been able to overcome it and pass more than 60 pieces of successful legislation, including new laws that are making a difference for this community, like getting millions in funding for Petaluma Valley Hospital, like helping prevent oil spills, like helping keep our state parks open. I want to take that same get-it-done approach to Congress and go to work for you. And the third essential quality is that the next member of Congress has to have a long-standing and authentic connection and commitment to you and to this community. I could not be more rooted in this amazing North Bay community. I'm raising my kids here. They're in the public schools. My wife's a teacher. I had 12 years in local government before my time in the Assembly, and for over 20 years, I've been working on any number of civic and volunteer activities. I love this place. It's a big part of why I'm running for Congress. And so if you're looking for somebody with strong democratic values, with a record of getting things done as a legislator, and with an authentic and long-standing commitment to this district and to your communities, I'd love to have your support, and I appreciate the chance to be here tonight.
Hopefully those in the back can see me. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I am Vice Mayor here in the city of Petaluma, and I'm very grateful to have everyone here tonight. I think this is the third forum that we've had in Petaluma, and it really shows how Petaluma has a great spirit of community involvement. And that's the kind of community involvement that I've been a part of for over 22 years here in Sonoma County. I started out in college working on campaigns and being involved in politics, and got really interested in policy making and joined the Commission on the Status of Women in 2005, and have been working on policy issues since that time. Been working here in Petaluma on our general plan and our development code process, and then eventually went on to join the City Council in 2008, the year that Barack Obama was elected. It was an exciting year. I'm proud to be a progressive Democrat on the Petaluma City Council. It's something that I hold very near and dear to my heart. And you know, it's very important because we're hearing a lot about progressivism in this race, and it's something that I continue to hold myself to and hold others to as well. So I want to say that this race is very important. It's a big new district, and I'm very excited to get out into that district and to meet people. I have been working on community organizing for my entire life since I was very young, as someone that our family got together and really celebrated the Latin culture. We used to have parades in the Camellia Festival in Sacramento, and it's that sort of spirit, that sort of community spirit that I came to know and love here in Petaluma, and want to continue to work with everyone in this district to ensure that the interests of this district remain strong and protected, and that we continue to protect this incredible natural resource of our coast and the rest of our farming districts as well. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
All right, thank you all. We've had a little chance to get acquainted now, and turning to the questions, again, I've tried to consolidate some of the concerns that are expressed on these cards, and there are still opportunities for you to submit cards if you would like to do so. As we go around through this next round, we will start with Susan Adams. You will all get 2 minutes to respond again. Bear in mind, it's not mandatory to take the full 2 minutes. And if anybody feels like the soul of wit is in brevity, we may get more than 4 questions in tonight. A number of the concerns expressed on the cards I've been given address the question of the experience that you would bring to this position if successful. We have a minority of you are currently elected officials of one level or another. So electoral experience is one concern. How important is that? Or is it perhaps not something that necessarily translates to the federal level? What is your personal, professional experience? How would you bring that to apply? Some of you have touched on that already. We could perhaps amplify that a little bit. Also concerns or questions about your community involvement, how that has been directed and where that might take you on Capitol Hill. And finally, what history do you have or relationship with organized labor in the district? So a lot to get through in 2 minutes. You don't have to take full time again, but do your best with 2 minutes. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was 3 questions. So
we only get 4.
I know. Thank you. You know, as I said earlier, I've been elected and have been serving on the Marin County Board of Supervisors for, this is my 3rd term, for more than 9 years. And through my leadership, I was the swing vote for Marin Clean Energy, with the hope that we will be off the fossil fuel grid in the next 10 years. And my vision for this whole district is that in the next 10 years, we will show the rest of the country how you can get off the fossil fuel grid and not have to have reliance on oil. As a nurse, 20 years, card-carrying CNA member. I helped negotiate the first labor contract for the nurses at UCSF when I was working there in my clinical practice. And I think that experience in policy is really important. When you run a business, you get to fire the people that aren't doing what you tell them to. When you're working in government, you have to find that one extra vote that's going to get your policy over the finish line. And there are definitely skills associated with doing that. A statesperson is needed during this time. I think with my lens at the local government, having, as I said earlier, been in the position of having to deal with unfunded mandates from the state and federal government, from trying to deliver programs like what Norman was talking about. We have FQHC facilities in our community, and the Open Door Clinic in Humboldt-Mendocino are doing some incredible work with rural health care right now. And so having that perspective, I've helped to write legislation. In the WRDA Act, we got some language in. I've been on the national front in health policy through the National Association of Counties. I know how to negotiate and broker deals and get them over the finish line. I fought some pretty tough battles against PG&E, against a mining operation in my district, and also with Sutter Healthcare that wanted to take away some significant services in our public hospitals. So I'm not afraid of the fight, and I'll fight hard for you.
So I hope I can remember all three portions of your question. I think it's really important that as you're thinking about your next Congresswoman, that you consider what are the issues that are most prescient on people's minds right now. And they seem to be around the notion of restoring our economy, restoring a strong base of opportunity for our working and middle class, making sure that we have a path to prosperity for our country. And so my path to running for office has been somewhat evolutionary in that regard. I, early on in my career, built several different businesses focused on our manufacturing sector. So how do we keep manufacturing strong? How do we make sure that those jobs that are related to innovation and our strength in terms of a middle wage economy stay strong? And during that time, we saw many of those jobs go overseas because our policy was not correctly tuned to how to keep those jobs here. I moved from there to becoming an educator, and I co-founded the Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology at UC Berkeley, where I get to actually teach our bright young minds how to themselves create small business and be the job creators of the future. And we do work there that is around policy for innovation, for clean energy and renewables, for our manufacturing sector, for global competitiveness. So this took me deeper into the policy realm, but it also took me deeper into service in terms of making sure that the impact that I was having could scale across many, many, many young entrepreneurs. And we've spun out over 18 companies now with young entrepreneurs at the helm doing great things in our Northern Bay Area economy. And so as I look to Congress, I think what's really important is to say, what do we need in our congressperson in order to be able to hit the ground running in Washington related to getting our economy back on track? And I would really hate to see that be a learning curve for our next congressperson. So what I hope to bring here is 20 years of experience in economic development, in policy related to strong economy, competitiveness, innovation, manufacturing, all things that I think are critical to restoring our working and middle class. And a perspective that's not coming as a career track politician, but as someone who's stepping in as an innovative challenger who can bring a new style of leadership to Washington. Thank you.
Good evening. As a psychiatrist of 20 to 30 years, I bring a lot of experience with conflict resolution, communication, and that's an issue that really speaks to the heart of what Congress is attempting to do. I'm one of the few candidates who is a strong supporter of term limits. The framers of the Constitution were all freshman Congress people, and I think new people coming into Congress bring new ideas, and primarily it keeps people from becoming entrenched with the financial supporters that fund the campaigns. If you're trying to raise $500,000 a year, pretty soon you become a lobbyist, become a career politician. So I think people should come in as a citizen, participate in legislation, and then turn around and allow someone else to have access to that. I also bring serious solutions to serious problems. I have over 15 patents that I've worked on over the years. My daughter flunked her life jacket test. I created a new standard for UL created the only life jacket that passes it. A child drowned. I created a water-activated alarm system that would trigger off of phones and cell phones, an alarm system so that you would know if a child had fell into a toilet or a bucket. A fellow couldn't get out of the water. I created a life raft with a drop-down ladder so that you could walk out of the water to get out of the water. That comes from a lot of experience in psychiatry with lucid dreaming. And there are specific problems in particular if we look at coastal energy as a source of jobs and revenue for this district, which would really give us the chance to keep our libraries open and our schools fully functional and allow the pensions to be paid and hopefully folks with issues around foreclosure to be addressed. So I bring a lot of diverse experience and look forward to being able to apply that in a very conflicted setting. It doesn't take a lot of observational skill to notice how dysfunctional Congress has gotten to be, and we can't, either side can't do it alone. We've got to bring in fresh people that are not entrenched and that can communicate and can try to address problems that need to be addressed, and in their absence, we're going to have some very serious environmental consequences.
Folks, I appreciate the applause, but we'll get through more responses without it. So if you could hold it for the end, that would be better, I think.
I'm really glad that I can hit the ground running on Capitol Hill, having worked very closely as co-chair of the Healthcare Not Warfare campaign with John Conyers, also working closely with Raul Grijalva, the co-chair of the largest caucus on Capitol Hill, the Progressive Caucus, both of whom have endorsed me. I'm very proud that I'm the non-elected person in this race who's been endorsed by the largest, strongest union in the North Bay and in the district, SEIU. And I think that endorsement has come to me in recent days out of recognition from the rank and file of labor, that historically there are grassroots activists, organizers, policy researchers, and all-around hellraisers who historically have gone to Congress without climbing the electoral ladder, without having a lot of corporate backing. Paul Wellstone, Jerry McNerney, George McGovern, who never held elective office before coming to the Congress. Paul Wellstone's a hero of mine. Came out of social movements. People said, oh, you don't have experience and you want to be U.S. Senator? And he was outspent 4-1 by corporate money. He was elected to the U.S. Senate, and we have a lot to celebrate as a result. Experience, we often, I think, forget in terms of going to Congress should include foreign policy experience. I'm the only person in this race with appreciable foreign policy experience. I've gone to Moscow, to Tehran, to Baghdad, to Kabul, in various ways, pursuing issues of nuclear weapons nonproliferation, of peace, of trying to find alternatives to war. I took 3 delegations to Baghdad before the war. I've gone to Afghanistan to try to find alternatives. I've gone to meet with the U.S. ambassador in Moscow to try to end nuclear weapons testing, and he was not very friendly. He worked for the Reagan administration at the time. This is part of, I think, the basis of experience. I've been an activist, an organizer, and a researcher for about 40 years, and you know, I'm not that old, you know, I'm 60, but this is a matter of how we get change done. And finally, the Progressive Caucus is the largest on Capitol Hill, but it needs more organizing. I'm an organizer. Sometimes it's tough to herd rabbits into the wheelbarrow, but it's got to be done for progressive causes.
All right, Bruce, I'm going to answer the elements of your question. The first was about elected experience, and I think it is relevant to have served in public office. Public service, after all, is about representing others, and I'm pleased that I've done that not only for going on 6 years in the state assembly, but 12 years before that in local government. More important than that is the fact that I've been able to get results on lots of tough issues as an elected official. So I think that's relevant experience. You asked about professional experience. My background is as a public interest attorney, and that includes representing women and minorities in workplace discrimination cases, Title IX cases on behalf of the National Organization for Women, all sorts of public interest law. And I think being an advocate is likewise a very important background and skill for doing the job of a legislator. You asked about involvement in the community, and I have a list longer than I can mention in our limited time of nonprofits that I have served as either a volunteer or a board member and activities from the schools community to any number of other groups that I've been integrally involved in for over 20 years here in the North Bay. And I think that, too, is highly relevant to the kind of connection and commitment that you can make to this community that you want to represent. And then finally, you asked about labor. And I'm pleased that I also am endorsed by SEIU. It was a three-way endorsement of the candidates here. But in addition to SEIU, I have over 20 other labor unions supporting me. I'm proud of that. I also have the sole endorsement from the North Bay Labor Council, the Central Labor Council. So pleased to be able to represent that tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. I have had quite a bit of experience as an elected and also on boards and commissions. And, you know, I'm running a right-sized campaign. I've had the kind of experience in local government and regional government that allows me to understand what the challenges are and how to access what we need for this district. And I think that that's very important. I haven't been in government so long that I have IOUs out there to people that may call on that when I get to DC, but I have the knowledge and the on-the-ground experience to be able to go and fight for the needs of this district. I come from a professional background in web development. I worked in a corporation many years ago when the internet was really booming, and have had that experience working in corporate office. And it's an interesting place to be, and it was an exciting time, but I really wanted to work on my own. And so I have experience of what it's like to run a small business. I'm a small business owner and have continued to do that while being a public volunteer. I also was quite involved in my children's education when they were in the public school system as a parent volunteer and a driver to all the many field trips that we needed to go to, since buses were not available because of all of the budget cuts that have been experienced. That involvement really led to much greater political action within the community to ensure that the budget cuts that had been happening didn't affect important curriculum like arts and music, and so really worked in this community to bring those kinds of programs back to our city schools. And my family's been very active in that. And then additionally, I've been working with labor causes for many years. We brought the living wage ordinance to Petaluma. It was something that I fought for as I was running for council, and was very successful in bringing that here, as well as including that working family and living wage sort of policy at the regional level with the county. So really working for families and the challenges that we face, and that's my time. Thank you.
And now we bring it back to Andy Caffrey. You're attached.
Okay. Here we go, okay. I haven't heard anybody say that they've been a member of a union. I was a member of the retail clerks when I was a boy. I was a clerk's helper for a couple of years. And in the Citizens Party, we worked with the SEIU and especially William Wimpesinger and the machinists, working to actually move the Citizens Party towards becoming a labor party. As I'm sure a lot of you know, there's been talk about a labor party for years, but hasn't really gotten off the ground. I'm also the person, along with two other folks, who finally brought the steelworkers and environmentalists together up in Humboldt County. Charles Hurwitz and the Maxam Corporation took over, in a hostile takeover, our primary corporation, the Pacific Lumber Company, in 1986. He also took over Kaiser Steel. So when the steelworkers were locked out, we went up there and worked in solidarity with them. My friend Mike Jacobel went undercover as a scab worker and took pictures. And then I was contacted and asked to connect with the Earth Firsters, who then organized a blockade of an ore ship in Tacoma. And after that, there became this large organization of environmentalists and labor. I haven't worked with anybody here in Sonoma County. But keep in mind, there's also 4 counties to the north. We don't really have organized labor up there. The unions were busted a long time ago in the timber industry. And we don't have the diversified economy that you have here. We have a very narrow range of opportunities up there. So I know a lot of you are very fond of a lot of people here, but I hope you will keep in mind that there are 4 other counties with various needs that you don't have. We only make $35,000 a year on average. You guys make $85,000. And lastly, I hope we will talk about what we can actually accomplish rather than our experiences, because up at where I live, people are dying because of the state budgets that have been passed here by Democrats. When the Medi-Cal is cut, when the SSI is cut, people lose their teeth. They can't see dentists, they can't get glasses, and they can't get mental health work. So we have to really start talking about what are we really trying to accomplish as people, as parents, and what are we going to do about it?
So there you have it, a field of active and committed Democrats. Give them all a hand if you like. As Andy was just noticing, the district as a whole has a long history of being reliant on some extractive industries. The fisheries, the timber industry has been the economic driver in the past. It seems that their day has passed for the present time. So the next question, I'm synthesizing from several of these cards, has to do with what sort of industries, what sort of opportunities, what sort of business development do you see as being most likely, most probable? What would you pursue to fill that void and restore some level of prosperity to those portions of the district that are not enjoying it right now, which is most of them?
Very good question. So I actually grew up in a logging, fishing, and mill town in northwest Washington state that looks very, very similar to many of the towns in our north coast. And in a working blue-collar mill town, I know what it's like to grow up when there were 3 mills and now there's 1. And the timber industry has certainly largely gone away. The fishing industry has been affected. So I think what we need to do is actually return to a climate of promoting small business and allowing a landscape that allows it to thrive. So the types of industries that I think we will and can see along our north coast are things like biomass and biofuels. Look to using our natural resource base that is available but can be used sustainably. Look to invest in capital sources and regulatory environment where small business can create a large number of jobs in those areas. We have over 85% of the jobs in our country created by small business. Reinvest in niche manufacturing that's locally and regionally relevant, as I believe that will be the long-term base that actually allows our manufacturing sector to be rebuilt, buy local, build local, consume local, and that if we as Americans and we as citizens actually take that to heart, that we can restore the local niche manufacturing, things like our local sustainable agriculture and local sustainable food production, local sustainable manufacturing, that can be relevant up and down this district, but certainly in the northern parts where we see less opportunity and very high unemployment rates. So part of our plan has been about putting in place the policies that support small local business. Again, access to capital, streamlining the regulatory environment, creating economic clusters that can band together where real expertise that we have in those regions can produce and be resulting in high-wage jobs in the area. So I would encourage you again to take a look at that plan and some of the ideas that are there, as I only have 2 minutes and I need to stop now, but those are the ideas that we're talking about.
I'm a cannabis physician. I've seen about 10,000 patients. And cannabis in the northern counties could contribute significantly to this district. There's estimated 10 million plants in this district. If you get $1,000, $2,000 a piece, you're usually into $20 billion, which could be taxed and regulated, which would provide immediate resources. The Sheriff of Mendocino County had provided a zip tie program, $50 a plant. If the federal government would allow state rights to be exercised, that would generate $500 million immediately just by having individuals pay $50 a plant. There's probably been $500 million spent on logo brand identity in Humboldt and Mendocino, and as in the district of Champaign, if you let that identity lapse, that would be a serious tragedy. I've been involved with a series of children who have Dravet's, a seizure disorder from which they suffer from 15, 20 times a day. They have seizures from the time they were born. I've been asked to come down and speak at UCSF, the pediatric neurology, because these kids, for the first time in their life, are having relief from seizures. So cannabis is also a comfortable part that we could immediately access if we just would be allowed to tax and regulate that. The really big thing, though, is the hydroelectric production. Gravity is what creates the tides. There's no CO2 produced from that. Biofuels produce CO2, and we need to stop that. We're putting 31 billion tons of CO2 into the atmosphere every year, 50% of which sticks. We need to pull that CO2 back out. This district would lead the nation and lead the world if we would just access that resource and develop it for the production of electrical energy that we could heat our houses, build our houses, run our cars, and that would create jobs and protection for our pensions, and is something that we need to focus on in the future.
We have a tremendous opportunity to go beyond the rhetoric of seeing no difference between protecting the environment and creating jobs and actually implementing it. Here's a couple of examples. We've got to get passed and signed into law Lynn Woolsey's bill to protect the Sonoma and southern Mendocino coast. It's been languishing far too long. We need to make it law. And that is not only an ecological imperative, but that will help to bring in tourism and stimulate more protective fishery measures that will make sure that the fish aren't damaged in terms of pollution and so forth, either from the land or oil spills or whatever. Another example, again, a huge, huge draw to this area, more than 195 different species of birds at Schellenberger Park. It is a tourism magnet. We need to protect it. That's an economic driver as well as an ecological imperative. I co-chaired for 2 years a commission on a Green New Deal for the North Bay. I'm an unapologetic, fervent, passionate New Dealer. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe in trickle-down job creation. It hasn't worked. And so for our communities, for this district, indeed for this entire country, we need what we got during the 30s, which was a federal government that's willing to pull out of the ditch our local, regional, and national economy, an economic situation that has been driven into the ditch by the plutocrats and now Wall Street. And that has to do with specific legislation. Let me give you an example, as well as a lot of specific measures like federal equivalent of New Deal electrification, which would be rural broadband, not left to the tender mercies of Comcast, but genuine parallel to the electrification programs of the 1930s of the New Deal. And also specifically to redistribute the wealth and create the money so that we can have massive federal jobs programs in this district, akin to the CCC and the WPA, to create jobs up and down this coast. Part of that component is a bill that Congressman John Conyers has said in public statements he wants me to help him bring to the floor and bring to passage the 21st Century Humphrey Hawkins Full Employment Job Training Act, a mouthful that is a 1/4% transaction tax on Wall Street, creating $150 billion a year to invest in job creation.
Thank you very much.
Well, the next member of Congress needs to understand the communities, needs to have working partnerships with the local governments, the private sector partners, and others that are already working on developing economic plans for each community in this long, incredible district. I've been meeting with those folks, and when it comes to the North Bay, I've actually been working with those folks for many years. And so each part of this district has already set its own priorities, whether it be for niche manufacturing or agriculture and any number of other types of industries and jobs that it wants to sustain. My job, if I'm your next member of Congress, is to support federal policies and investments that encourage and make that happen, that work seamlessly with these priorities and plans that have been made at the local level. And I want to just take a moment to tell you about some of the things that I'm already doing as a state assemblyman to try to support jobs and economic productivity in this region. And the first one starts with keeping our state parks open. I would agree with Norman that our natural environment, our natural infrastructure, if you will, is a big part of our economy here in the North Bay, and state parks are a magnet for economic productivity. So certainly last year, the entire year, through hearings, through passing AB 42 and other legislation, I've been leading the fight. You're going to see me continue to do that because I see that direct connection between state parks and jobs in our economy. Also this year, I'll be introducing what we're calling the Clean Manufacturing and Job Creation Act of 2012. It's going to allow local governments to create what we call clean manufacturing zones, where we don't relax any of our environmental standards, but we get the environmental reviews and the planning done up front so that businesses can locate there without long delays and without risks when it comes to permitting. I think it's going to be a great way to attract investment and to create jobs in the North Bay and in other parts of the state. And then finally, I'm introducing a bill that has come up with a very creative way of using the $6 billion in unclaimed property sitting in the general fund, much of which will never be claimed, and using it as collateral to leverage hundreds of millions of dollars in an innovative loan guarantee program to provide working capital for small businesses. That's one of the most important things we can do right now to get this economy moving, is to help small businesses get access to capital because banks aren't lending. There's a whole bunch more we can do on the federal level if I'm your next member of Congress, including letting credit unions lend to businesses, something we've been fighting for years, and requiring big banks to do
Your
community
2
and small
minutes
business
have
lending.
elapsed, I'm afraid.
But you'll have to go to my website for those details.
Well, as your representative on the Regional Climate Protection Authority, I've been working on a number of things that have been discussed here tonight. And we have been leaders in this county around energy retrofit projects for business and residential. And we're really defining and leading the way on how to do this. We want to continue the work that's been done in Marin County on community choice aggregation, and so we are bringing that to Sonoma County, and that process is moving forward rapidly. It's been a very exciting time for the county to be exploring energy independence and energy creation, and this is the kind of leadership that we need to bring to the rest of the district. But additionally, in addition to small businesses and manufacturing that is being done very well here in Petaluma, with the kinds of programs like what's happening at Petaluma High, we also need to focus on the other side, which is agriculture and small farms and the work that needs to continue to go on to create food security throughout the district. There's a lot of challenges to the northern part of this district around food security, and I've had the opportunity to meet with farmers markets and local farmers about those issues, and as a Petaluma Granger, someone that co-founded the Grange here in Petaluma, working to really help advocate for those issues throughout this district is something that's very exciting. Being able to increase our farm potential throughout the district is going to be an important way to help reduce greenhouse gases, so that we can reduce our need for foreign oil and be able to produce healthy organic food here at home for our residents. So in addition to all of the manufacturing that you've heard about, which is a very important piece, the other half of that is food security. And as those challenges get greater and greater, that's going to need to be focused on. And I believe that we have the resources and the people in the district to do that.
And we bring it back to the center of the table.
I agree with Jared that we want someone who knows the district. In that case, I'm the only one qualified, because I'm the only one who has lived and worked in all 6 counties of the district. First time I worked in Marin was in 1983. I was a trailer supervisor for the Salvation Army, and every day I drove from Redwood City up to Novato and back. Sorry, we didn't get into Sonoma County. And I lived in San Rafael for 2 years in the mid-90s, and I've also lived in Santa Rosa. As far as jobs go, there are no jobs on a dead planet. If you're a 4-pack-a-day tobacco smoker, it matters whether you stop smoking 4 or 5 cigarettes a day or 4 packs a day. When it comes to the climate crisis, we have to start with how bad is that situation. In 1990, there were reports issued by the EPA, by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and the Woods Hole Research Center saying we had to reduce our emissions 50 to 80% below 1990 levels by 2005. We missed it, and we don't get any more time. In fact, the science since then shows that we underestimated it. So I look at what everybody's saying in the country and the candidates as if they're saying it on the Titanic. You know, if you say, well, you know, we're going to work with the bankers here while the ship is going down. There are no banks on a dead planet either. So my program is built around a set of proposals called New Green America. There are 7 proposals that we can, I think, all agree about. The second one is rebuilding America's infrastructure around bioregions and sustainability to meet all our needs as close to home as possible. That means an end to globalization. That's how you cut fossil fuels. You don't ship things, you don't ship our salads from California to Toronto. We have to meet our needs here to have economic security. We have to do something very different from what we've done before, and a New Deal isn't enough. President Obama has to declare a national climate emergency, and we have to reorient our economy the same way we did in World War II. We didn't make cars for a couple of years. There are things like that where we have to really assess our priorities, and we have to start by coming together on local levels, like you folks here, and start to say, well, how can we reduce our emissions here 80% in 10 years? Because that's as fast as I think we can do it. And then you have to design what that economy is going to be. I can't be up here telling you about any particular single path.
Thank you. I agree with Jared Huffman on the fact that the priorities for job development has to come from the community. In our county, we did a very thorough evaluation of what are the top 10 targeted industries. The job of a congressional leader is going to be able to bring those resources home to help local government realize that. What I don't agree is that the state government should have fought a little bit harder before closing down the state parks in the first place, and then having to craft bills that make local government and nonprofits responsible for the state's responsibility, because there's no money in local government and nonprofits right now either. So it's going to be important that your representative will even fight when the party is saying, you know, we're going to go a certain direction on those important issues. Some of what I've been hearing up and down the coast is agriculture is important. Clean renewable energy is going to be one of the areas where we're going to be able to really have an impact. In our county, we went from an unemployment rate of 10.5% to about 6.5% over the last 3 years since the launching of our Marin Clean Energy, because we're doing energy retrofits and solar installations and biomass and methane capture. So we have examples of how this is working at the local level. The president's job bill also says we should be investing some of those resources that we have into our infrastructure. We have failing rural roads, we have schools, we have public works projects that are in desperate need, and all of those generate jobs. And I would caution all of you to really look carefully when somebody makes a claim about creating thousands of jobs. Ask, where were those jobs created? Were they California taxpayers that were being employed? And how did it benefit us in the 2nd Congressional District? And I have a very strong record of working with our local businesses in doing just that.
So this question is for everybody. And it pertains to the federal budget, which of course is one of the issues that is dominant when you get to Capitol Hill. There is a big government spending deficit. It has brought the nation nearly to a standstill on more than one occasion in the last year. And what would you do to address it? Do we need more taxes? Do we need to make cuts in specific areas? And if so, what? And finally, what part does Medicare play in all of this as you approach the issue? So try to, again, address all those points in your 2 minutes. And remember what the question is as we go all the way around the table. The national debt.
National debt. Yeah, we just went to 100% GDP within the last month. So at $15 trillion, that's quite an inheritance we're going to leave our children. You saw failures on 2 points. First, raising the debt level, and then you saw the Superfund try to address this issue, and you had the bipartisan just kind of gridlock. No change in taxes, no change in domestics, and they were unable to trim $1.2 trillion from a budget that really needed $5 trillion trimmed. So if we have that much difficulty with the first trillion, the second, third, fourth, and fifth trillion are going to be extremely difficult. And we look what's going on in Europe, and that's got to be a concern that they're maybe farther down the road, but we're headed down that path. So I believe the greatest national threat is the current deficit spending. And it's going to require pain on both sides of the aisle, and it's going to require some type of participation. I think that going back to term limits and fresh people coming into Congress keeps communication open. And when you get yourself locked into a situation where there is no communication, you stand there toe to toe, and you say, you know, we'll take this right to the brink, we'll collapse the government. That doesn't really help us with what are incredibly serious problems. So, number one issue is that debt. Number one issue in the sense of it has to be dealt with. The climate. This all has to take place within an ability to increase revenues without destroying the planet. And if we don't really address the environmental issues, then it really won't matter whether we have $15 trillion or $20 trillion. So there are several really huge issues on the table, and I believe it's going to take new people and probably several amendments to the Constitution in order for this to be able to come about.
The political rhetoric about shared sacrifice, if you decode it, coming from a lot of the corporate media and a lot of politicians, including some Democrats, unfortunately, could be decoded as Wall Street gets the shares, the rest of us get the sacrifice. That ain't right. We've had more than enough pain, thank you, among preschool kids who can't get a Head Start. People of all ages who aren't getting proper nutrition, who aren't getting health care, those who are worried justifiably about retirement security, teachers and students K through 12, junior college, graduate school, enormous student debt, more than doubled in the last decade, just federal loan out more than $100 billion now. So I am not a deficit hawk. If you look at the history of what's taken place in this country during the New Deal, we went into a double-dip depression in 1936 because the deficit hawks stampeded Washington into cutting the stimulus spending. We need stimulus spending. We need public investment. We need long-term jobs and infrastructure. And as I've gone up and down this district from the Golden Gate Bridge to Del Norte County, and I ask people, what are you worried about? What's on your mind? The deficit rarely comes up. Once you get outside the rarefied atmosphere of the punditocracy in Washington and a lot of the political, what passes for leadership on Capitol Hill among the Republicans in particular, people aren't worried about the deficit. They're worried about health care, education, housing, jobs. They're worried about retirement security. So yes, we can reduce the deficit by slashing the military budget, by taxing Wall Street, by having a progressive tax structure, by plugging up the loopholes at last for the huge corporations that are offshoring their operations and avoiding taxes. This can be done. It requires progressive commitment.
Well, I don't think you can just ignore a $15 trillion national debt. I think it's a very serious thing that, if left unaddressed, could be a very, very serious drag on our economy and our national security. So I want to absolutely confront it and address it, but I think we can be smart and thoughtful about how we do it. And you often hear about two tools as being our only choices. You hear about cuts and you hear about taxes. And I think they're going to have to be some of each. But there's a third tool that I want to talk about that is essential if we're going to get there. Because if you try to cut your way to eliminating a $15 trillion national debt, you can't do it. And if you try to tax your way to getting rid of a $15 trillion, you're going to have a real hard time doing that as well, at least without some unintended consequences. So the cuts that I support, I think, like many of my colleagues up here, are going to start with the military, start with ending these wars of choice, and significantly shrinking our global military footprint. That's going to save us an awful lot of money and put us well on our way to solving the problem. Second, on the revenue side, I support tax fairness. And the truth is, the wealthiest Americans right now have the lowest tax burden we've seen since World War II. And I'm not talking about class warfare now. I'm just talking about fairness and math. It's not unreasonable to ask folks that are doing really well to pay their fair share. So whether that is a transaction tax on Wall Street, whether that is something like the Warren Buffett rule to make sure that the wealthiest millionaires pay at least a 30% tax rate, or whether that includes going even further and beginning to root out some of the subsidies that we give to industries, like the $40 billion a year that we've been giving to big oil that needs to stop. We can do a lot in our tax policy and with some thoughtful spending cuts. But the third piece is we've got to get people back to work. We've got to get this economy moving again, and if we can do that, we will start to chip away at the deficit and that debt far faster and far more effectively than anything we can do with those limited tools of just cuts or just taxes.
Working in local government, I have seen the cuts and have hoped and have helped to try to stave off future cuts. It's been quite a challenge. We've seen about a 30% reduction in revenues here in the city of Petaluma, and those equate to local services, things that make your quality of life better. And so one of the first things that we need to do is really address how to help local governments, both local and county governments. And the way to do that is to open Medicare to all public employees and their families immediately as a first stage to opening Medicare to all. And the way to do this really alleviates the challenges that local governments are facing with the increased healthcare costs year after year after year. And the expectation is that those increased healthcare costs are going to be paid by the workers so that they continue to see dwindling paychecks year after year after year. And our services continue to get cut and cut and cut. And we can't operate this way anymore. We really need to draw the line and bring back those services to local and county governments. And this budget that has been proposed is one way to do that. Those revenues that have been discussed, the 30% for the highest paid in the country is certainly a way to go. Addressing the transaction tax on Wall Street, another way to go. But there will be other cuts that need to be made, and certainly that's going to have to happen through the military budget. But we also need to see jobs programs coming back into this district. And the People's Lobby idea of a World Service Corps is something that can get our youth and our recently graduated back to work and reducing student debt immediately. So being able to support those kinds of infrastructure bills like our transportation bill and our jobs bill that has been yet to be successful are going to be very important to being able to meet the needs of this district.
You know, if a person doesn't see a problem, they're not going to find a solution to something. The programs that I hear talked about by most of the other candidates are programs that are put forth as if there is no climate crisis, as if we're going to just keep on producing 25-mile-per-gallon cars out of Detroit, and that's going to be great because Ed Schultz says, wow, Obama did this great thing for the workers. Well, Michael Moore said that we should have used that money to buy those companies at far less and nationalize them, and then turn the infrastructure process into making the real cars that are energy efficient, the other forms of transportation that we need, the multiple public transportation vehicles. As far as the debt goes, I'm really concerned about the most important debt, the debt to the future, the debt to our children, the ecological debt. How is nature's balance of payments doing? Well, you wouldn't know by the kind of programs that are being discussed. As far as the $15 trillion, I agree with Norman. Right now, if a person was poor, a poor person is not the person, that's not when you want to be paying back your debts. That's when you want support. When things are down, when the economy is crashing, that's when you need to spend money. It's when the economy is doing well that you pay off the debt. I agree that, I disagree that it's a war of choice, by the way. I think what happened was a war of conquest. What we're talking about is an empire. And so if we really want to take care of the debt, we have to not wage $3 trillion plus wars, and we have to retreat the empire. We don't need bases in 150 countries. I think we'd be pretty safe with them in 75 countries.
So how many of you Facebook? There's been something on Facebook lately that shows that the deficit was the worst under the Bush years, and it's actually the best under the Clinton and Obama years. We're making some changes. We were in the worst recession that we've ever been in. We inherited that from the predecessor who gave a lot of tax cuts and deregulated and sent our mortgage and homeowners into crisis because they were given mortgages that they couldn't afford. And we're dealing with that right now. I think that it's going to be important for us to get rid of the Bush tax cuts. When I talked to Republicans, I said, you all were excited with the Reagan tax cuts. Those were a lot higher. I said, let's go back to the Reagan tax cuts as a start. When Warren Buffett says, I'm not paying enough, I'm saying, let's help Warren. Let's help him pay a little bit more. And you have other people besides Warren Buffett who are making a lot of money that are saying that they need to pay their fair share. The problem is in Washington right now, we have a lot of millionaires there who are protecting their pocketbook, and we have a lot of people there protecting their wealthy donors. And I think part of this is also tied up with campaign finance reform. And if you look at all of our different, reports that we have, about 90% of my donors are middle-class working people that come from in this district. Another candidate that has a lot of money, 90% of that money comes from out of the district, from corporate donors, from investment bankers, people that can write maximum checks. And some of us don't have that kind of resource, but the question should be, who are you going to be having to be beholding to when you get into office? And who I'm going to be beholding to are the working families, the nurses, the teachers, the firefighters, the law enforcement officers, the child care workers, the people that I've been fighting for and working for my whole career. And so I think we have a lot of work to do. We have to pay off the debt. As a county supervisor, I don't take the pension plan or the car allowance. I'm walking the talk of being an elected official that is not on the take.
So I think as we look at the Obama budget plan for 2012 and consider any really economic proposal, there are probably three key goals that we want to measure by. So one is strengthening our middle class. The second is making sure we're paving a path towards balanced federal deficit reduction. And the third is making sure we're continuing to fuel and enhance our economic recovery. So right now, our middle class is really the potential engine for economic growth, but it is threatened by things like a fraying social safety net and a lack of public investment and an increasing sense of wealth disparity and income inequality in our country. And all of these things actually undermine the middle class and keep us from actually regenerating the economic engine that we need. So as we look to balancing the budget, we do need to look to sources like our military. We're forward deployed in over 130 countries. Those are places we don't need to be, and that's money we need to be bringing home now. We need to look at tax fairness and make sure that our tax policy is progressive instead of regressive. We can't do this on the backs of working and middle class people. It just won't work. Our working families don't have discretionary money in their pockets to spend in order to get our economy going again. So we need to make sure that we're moving from regressive policies to progressive policies and doing things like the Buffett rule and repealing the Bush tax cuts for those making over $250,000 and making sure that deductions are capped at 30% and so forth so that our tax code makes sense and we're gaining the revenue that we need to invest. And then thirdly, we need to make sure that we're continuing to invest in the economic recovery. The stimulus has worked. There's been a lot of criticism by the right, but every economic measure from GDP to layoffs to new job growth has improved from the moment the stimulus took effect. And we need to be continuing to invest in our future, in education for our kids, in infrastructure for the 21st century, and in economic landscape and capital access to help our small business grow so that we can do all of those things and have the budget make sense. Thanks.
Thank you all very much. Now, as you know, folks, this is scheduled to go until about 8:30 tonight, which would require us at this point to go directly into closing statements. But is anybody in a hurry to get home? So I'd like to pose one brief question before we get to those closing statements and give the candidates 1 minute. 1 minute to respond to this. And it's a little bit different, not to get too Oprah on you. But the question is, what's the most recent book you've read or are reading? And how would you take what you're learning from that and apply it to this job that you want? A little something different. Let's mix it up. Norman Solomon, you go first.
You know, I've reread Grapes of Wrath, and it reminds me, you know, there's a scene in the film where the bank comes out to repossess the Joad family home, and out in the farm, and the grandpa is just trying to figure out who is responsible for kicking them off the land. To me, that resonates today, and the answer is Wall Street. And to me, it resonates because as at the end of the film, as Ma says, it's we the people that's going to make the changes. And when I read the book, it made me think about how we're going to make the change. And to me, it has to do with creating the future that we believe in through our own daily activity. And that's why our campaign not only doesn't take any corporate PAC money, doesn't take any lobbyist money, but we don't have any background in building our political career or my political career by taking corporate money through being a legislator or anything else. Finally, we have more than 800 volunteers and 3,400 different individuals have given us money. That is healthy change that Wall Street is not going to care for.
I just finished a book called Unbroken by an author named Laura Hillenbrand, and it's an amazing story about a guy named Louis Zamperini who was, during World War II, shot down over the Pacific, drifted for a record-setting, I think, 48 days before he was unfortunately blown into Japanese-occupied Marshall Islands and captured by the Japanese, where his adventure got even worse. And he spent the next couple of years in brutal conditions in Japanese prisoner camps. And I think the lesson I take from this story, it's an amazing book. I really highly recommend it. But the lesson I take is never give up. No matter what they throw at you, no matter how tough it gets, believe in yourself. Maintain your sense of dignity and grace, and your sense of humor is very important in there as well. And you can survive anything and go on to do great things.
Currently, I'm reading a book called Illegal People, and I've been exploring the challenges of immigration reform because it's something that we really need to address, and it's something that can certainly change both the challenges culturally within our communities, as well as the budget issue that we've been discussing here tonight. We have undermined our immigration policy through defunding and made hardworking people unable to become documented and tax-paying citizens in this country. And so that's something that I'm very interested in changing, and additionally, I'm relearning Spanish. It's something that has been lost in my family in just a few short generations, and so in order to continue to do that outreach, I'm also relearning Spanish, and it's been very incredible. So looking forward to being able to read additionally in Spanish as well in the future. Thank you.
Gracias.
I'm not sure what the last book I read was, because I finished 3 this week. I read a lot of books. Economic books, Martin Carnoy's book on economic democracy, James Galbraith's book, The Predator State, and Dmitry Orlov's book about the collapse of the Soviet Union and what we can expect as our economy collapses. And the moral of that one is the Russians were better off than we're going to be. They actually made things that built to last. All the stuff we have that's plastic, that's going to disintegrate. So basically just all kinds of things about economics from them. And another book is called The Great Disturbance, about the climate crisis. I'd strongly recommend that because it talks about how urgent it is. The Great Disturbance is like, we get slapped around, everything changes. So please check that out.
I wish I had that much time to read 4 books in a week. But the most, and finish them too. The most recent book that I've read is The Little Engine That Could, with my grandson. It's his favorite, and we do it every night that he's doing sleepovers at my house. And there are certainly some lessons in there for those of us that persevere even when things seem like they're impossible. But the other book that I'm reading for my big people time is Team of Rivals. And it's about Abraham Lincoln's story about how he brought all of his opponents and allies together in his cabinet during the most difficult time in American history, and how he was able to bring this country through some of its darkest hours. And it's very inspirational. There are lessons there about how every person has something valid to say at the table, regardless of whether you agree with them or disagree with them on one issue. They might be your strongest ally on another issue. And so you should never blow anybody off when you're trying to solve problems.
Well, so if it's not clear so far that I care very deeply about working in middle-class families, I would say that the last 3 books that I've read have been those all on the economy and restoring our middle class, by Bill Clinton, by Tom Friedman, by Robert Reich, who I adore and who I work with at UC Berkeley, and who I've spoken at length with about economic policy and how do we get our economy going again. Materials by all of them recently, new books and writings around how we really, really, really restore our middle class and make sure our families have a fair shake and that our kids can go to college and we can have a healthy retirement and that our middle class can blossom again so we can all live the American dream. Those are they're issues that I've been fighting for a very long time and will continue to fight in this race. And I would say that they're not always the most exciting bedtime reading, but I get a really good night's sleep.
The one book I read this last 2 weeks probably is The Lies of a Cell by Lewis Thomas. It's probably the 4th time that I've read it. This was written back when we were in the middle of the kind of Cold War and there was a lot of fear of nuclear winter annihilation. And it was looking for people to kind of study, or he wanted people to understand how things related. And he said if we could just understand what goes on in the intestine of the Australian termite, and the bacteria that break down the cellulose and the spirochetes that push the bacteria, we would begin to see that, there are miracles at the microscopic level, but there's miracles in relationships, and that you have these very, very divergent organisms that appear to be functioning as one, and that if we don't understand the role of biodiversity and the environment, I think there are serious threats ahead. And so I think we need to pick up where Al Gore said, and he claimed it was an inconvenient truth, but in fact, it has turned into an ugly fact, and I hope we move that information forward and begin to act on it immediately.
So there you go, something besides campaign literature to read when you get home tonight. With that, we have exhausted our time for questions, and we'll turn to each of the candidates for a short and succinct closing statement. And Jared Huffman, you are the first to go.
Well, thank you, Bruce. Thanks to all of you for being part of this forum. And I just want to say I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to be part of this great group of candidates. And I hope what you have heard in my campaign, what you will hear as the campaign goes forward, is something a little bit different. Because I'm not just going to talk to you about what I hope to do if you elect me to Congress. You won't just hear campaign points from me. You're also going to hear a lot about what I have done. Because I have been your representative, you know me, I have a record, and I'm very proud of that record. So we're going to be talking a lot about that, and I think a strong record of getting things done as a legislator is the best indication you have about how effective somebody is going to be in Congress. The other thing that I think is unique is that the people and the groups that I have worked with over these many years in the North Bay are supporting me. That includes organized labor, from firefighters to bus drivers to educators. I'm very proud of that support. Every environmental group to endorse in this race has supported my campaign. I'm very proud of that. Elected officials, including a majority of the Petaluma City Council, right here, a majority of your Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, a majority of the Marin County Board of Supervisors.
And that's a minute.
Thank you.
I am running a right-sized campaign, and I'm still your public volunteer. When I first got into this campaign, I was expected to work 30 to 40 hours a week dialing for dollars. And as somebody that's fully dedicated to the public work that I'm doing, that did not make sense for me at all, because I wanted to continue to serve the public and the work that I've been doing, because it's been very important. And so I chose to approach this campaign very differently. I'm a believer in public financing. Our mayor was elected his first time through public financing. And we need to address how we spend all of this money in campaigning when it should be going to services and nonprofits. And so I'm doing it differently. I'm committed to not spending corporate media dollars and perpetuating that system. And so I'm looking for your support tonight and your vote to help me get through this campaign. We're focusing on getting out the information on the ballot as the right way to go and free and earned public media. So it's an exciting campaign, and you can visit my website, tiffanyreneeforcongress.com, sign up for my emails, and you can stay connected to what's happening. Thank you.
By the way, the Dmitry Orlov book is called Reinventing Collapse. And if you want to see any of these books, including the Robert Reich book, which is a great book, first book you should read. You can come up here and check out my books. I know, I'm a little nerdy. Quick show of hands. How many people here are freaked out, dismayed, or depressed about the climate crisis, ecological situation, the economy, or what's going on in the government? Right. Well, we're unanimous, I guess. I think everyone is probably. Well, so that's a really important question, because are we going to really address those problems at a fundamental level? If you want to know about my green politics, I'm not here as some kind of infiltrator from the Green Party. I don't have some loyalty to any party. I'm here to bring green politics into the Democratic Party, because green politics is about dealing with these problems at the root. In fact, that's what radical means, dealing with things at the root. So I hope you will think about your children, think about the future, and think, well, who would my kids want you to vote for? I think they'll want you to vote for me. Thank you.
Or perhaps the nurse that delivered them. I really appreciate the opportunity to have been here tonight. And I was the third one that was endorsed by SEIU. So I'm proud of that. I have been a very hardworking public servant. I've been part of the middle class. I have worked with community for my whole career. I have a deep passion for this. And I do work hard. I do my homework. I study the issues. I get the right people around me that have a wide range of opinions so that we can find the sweet spot in solving problems. And I've been very successful with that at the local level. I don't have people that can write me big $5,000 checks. I don't have a guru that can send me $5,000. I have people that are sending me $20, $30, $50, a lot of them because they believe in what I'm doing. And I have deep family roots and connections all the way up and down the coast, from my fourth generational Mendocino ranching family that still ranches in Boonville, to Humboldt Fisher people and law enforcement people. And I ask you to support me in this race. I'm going to be a really great congresswoman for this district.
Thank you all so much for being here. I want to just circle back around to one of the first things I said tonight, and that is that this is all about service. So bringing a real passion and commitment to serving the community, serving the district, fighting for our working and middle class families, and doing that with 20 years of experience around economic policy and economic development to help get people back to work. We have been so lucky and honored that Emily's List has endorsed us in this race, as has Women's Campaign Fund, as I mentioned, elected officials up and down the district. And they are looking to my candidacy as one where we can keep a strong progressive woman in the seat and someone who can help take care of our working families. I would also say that as it relates to fundraising, I couldn't agree more with everyone up here about the necessity for money in politics to be clean. We've taken 100% of our donations have come in from individual contributors. Certainly no corporate money, no corporate PAC money. We will not take any of that money. All individual folks who believe in what we are talking about and getting behind us. And I just want to thank you all and ask you all to join our campaign and be on our train. Thank you.
The gridlock you find in Sacramento is not the gridlock you find in Washington. If you take a look at Thompson's voting record, everything that he supported did not pass. Everything he opposed did pass. When you're a minority in the federal government, it's a different type of gridlock. One way or another, there has to be some kind of communication. And the precipice politics that have driven us to this current state and are going to become galvanized this year as we're forced to kind of divvy up this $1.2 trillion deficit is going to be very educational. And I think as a psychiatrist, a skill in communicating, and hopefully as a freshman with term limits in place, we can bring in new people who are willing to say, these are issues that need to be addressed and need to be addressed now, and that we're all Americans, and one way or another, we've got to solve these problems together, or we're going to go down together.
Thank you.
Well, as a candidate, you might say that I'm a full-time volunteer for the Solomon for Congress campaign. We have close to 800 volunteers now, and we've been able to raise several $100,000 while not taking any corporate PAC money by building the campaign from the bottom up. It's not that we raise money and then we're going to sort of buy some AstroTurf. We're doing it as a grassroots campaign, and that's how we're able to have by far the most different number of contributors who are giving relatively less per check. Let me mention that Jim Hightower campaigned with me in Sonoma County. He talks about a hardware store near Old Fashioned one where he lives. Says in front, we help you do it yourself. We help you do it yourself. That's what the federal government should do with and for us. Give us the resources, have the democratic process going, and stay out of the way when localities do wise ordinances and practices like what is true on the North Coast in terms of marijuana and cannabis. We should get out of the way of trying to micromanage localities, and we should get the resources from the federal government to do it right. Lastly, Susan, that's a great book. A little engine that could, a little train that could. I would just want to mention mine in closing, my favorite ones. The Emperor Has New Clothes, and also Horton Hears a Who, and if you want to put a label on my ideology, it's a Hortonist. Thank you.
And thank you all. You've been holding your applause. Let it loose. I'd like to say thank you to all our candidates for being here tonight. I also want to make sure we give proper credit to Jim Peterson, the man who's been running the sound behind me here so you could hear everything that was said tonight. Remind you once again that the Petaluma Community Access has been videotaping the entire proceedings here. They will have them up on their website in a few days, if I'm not mistaken, so you can refer people who couldn't get here tonight to that and help them catch up that way. Thanks to our sponsors this evening, the Sonoma County Democratic Party, the 10th Assembly District Democrats, Sonoma County Latino Democratic Club, and the Boys and Girls Club of Marin and Southern Sonoma County. Watch for additional debates, including those coming up on KRCB. Good night.